Hey, this is Jen Johans at filmintuition.com and filmintuition on social media and Letterboxd. And this is Watch with Jen. Joining me today, I am so pleased to welcome two friends and the host of the Film Stage's excellent podcast, The B-Side, which covers movie stars in a fascinating way by focusing not on the films that made or kept them famous, but the ones that actors made in between. A producer and a filmmaker living in Pittsburgh, Dan Mecca started the Film Stage with Jordan Raup in college at Buffalo, and Conor O'Donnell is a post-production supervisor based in New York City and also serves as a critic for the Film Stage. Well, Conor and Dan, thank you so much for coming back to the pod. How are you guys doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm ready to buckle some swash.
Yeah, I'm good too. Also, swashbuckling, feeling good. Happy to be back always.
Yeah, I love this topic. But before we get into that, what have you guys been up to lately over at the B-Side? Anything exciting on the horizon?
Yeah. Well, speaking of Horizon, so we've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but our last episode before we took that break for the summer, we did a second episode on some B-sides from Kevin Costner with our friend Chad Harbold. So if you're eagerly awaiting the return of the B-side, which should happen at the end of this month, we'll be doing an episode on Barbra Streisand. But if that has not dropped yet, you can cleanse your palate, whet your appetite, whatever other euphemism you want, with Kevin Costner. So that's a fun episode. We talk about No Way Out and Let Him Go and a few other good great.
And we talk about Horizon as well.
Yeah, we did this. We had recorded it sort of right after chapter 1 had come out and sort of unfortunately not done very well, but the three of us came to a vehement defense of it because Dan and I.
Well, we should say, Jen, you were on as we record, and it wouldn't have been that long ago if you're listening. You were on the Film Stage show talking to Bryan and Robin about, and also putting up a lot of love for Horizon as well, which was nice to hear.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies of the year so far, really.
Agreed.
Love Horizon. And so if you're listening, I'm excited that the B-side is coming back. But yeah, you can buckle your swash with some past episodes. We're just going to keep making up weird, euphemisms tonight about swords and all kinds of fun, exciting things.
I did once look up what it means to buckle swash, and I've since forgotten, but
okay.
Oh yeah, we should look it up. I'll look it up while we. Let me try. Let me dig.
What does it mean to buckle swash? I don't actually know where the genre came from, and I mean, I guess this is as good a segue as any into why we chose the topic. But I've always loved these kinds of movies, and I've loved the way they've infected other kinds of movies in terms of different genres and other filmmakers and stuff like that. But when you had asked us, for an idea for a topic, I kind of was just, Dan and I were kind of mulling it over, and almost without thinking, I almost subconsciously, my brain was just oh, what about swashbucklers? Specifically this interesting moment from they didn't ever fully go away. No. We should note they sort of took it's a genre that's just takes different forms over the years, but there was this concerted effort, it almost seems, from the 90s through the mid 2000s, basically, to amp up the genre again in different ways. And you kind of have this, speaking of Costner, right? He kind of almost helps jumpstart it with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
And then that kind of turns into a couple other things along the way. We'll talk about Kevin Reynolds in a second because he also later directed Count of Monte Cristo. But I don't know. It's just this interesting genre that had this weird resurgence, and while it was resurging, seemed to also be deeply affected by other things in other genres that were happening, right? Like you had the impact of Braveheart, and then a few years later, Gladiator, right? And then ultimately something like even the Matrix and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of are these huge hits that then leave their touch on the genre in a way that it keeps trying to pivot and change. And I think it's this interesting thing that almost culminates with the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise becoming a thing in the early 2000s and kind of throughout the 2000s and beyond, which almost dovetails with like the IP-ification of big blockbuster, right? Like the Swashbuckler almost survives and gets resurrected by Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's almost part of this like bigger, terrible trend, right, in Hollywood that like makes it go away again in some respects. So it's this interesting, you could almost chart a lot of these movies as just, yeah, I mean, maybe not unlike Westerns throughout the years, things like that. I feel like Swashbucklers are very similar in that regard, that like you can just see how the trends in filmmaking in Hollywood internationally affect the genre over the years. So that's kind of why I think it wasn't immediately why I suggested it, but I think as I was watching a lot of these movies, I started to kind of like realize like, oh yeah, this is almost a weird litmus test for things that are and aren't working in terms of like what audiences want in their big movies.
In the 80s, of course, you had Excalibur. I did an episode with Adrian McKinty on Excalibur and Lord of the Rings, and that was a lot of fun. But then you also had things like Highlander and Lady Hawk and Willow and stuff. And this was kind of more a return to form of those sort of Errol Flynn or Dr. Sin or the Zorro, like these old sort of serial Saturday afternoon kind of adventures.
Yeah. And the adventure, I think, is the key part of it, right? Because they're not necessarily like fantasy oriented, right? No. So they're not fantasy epics like Excalibur or Lord of the Rings, which are great, obviously. But obviously swashbuckling happens in those movies too. But the adventure is the other part of it. And what I think is funny is like adjacent to some of the movies we're going to talk about, you also have this this line of sort of movie making that happens in the 90s where you have The Phantom, The Shadow, you have The Mummy, right? Like you have all these movies, frankly, all movies that like if someone's watching the movies we're going to talk about and they're like, oh, I really liked Mask of Zorro, what else should I watch? Like I would point them to The Mummy, right? Like I would, oh, you want a fun adventure with two really sexy leads? Great. There's The Mummy. Like you can watch that. So it's this, it is this weird overall thing. And I think part of it is maybe Hollywood grasping at straws to some extent of like, hey, what's gonna still work, right? Like what can we use to like make something bigger, possibly on a budget, even though some of these are not necessarily small budget films, but like, you know, you're still using practical sets. Some of them might even be sets from like other things, right, that are getting recycled. And so there's this thing of, you know, trying to figure out what the next thing is, which I do think is why it's important to end on Pirates. Like I said, like it, because that is the next thing. Like that model of filmmaking becomes the next thing.
Yeah. And, you know, what's funny is when they became famous in the 30s and the 40s, the Seahawk, Errol Flynn, like you mentioned, Jen, I think they started more as B pictures, but then they became popular, right? So you kind of see, you land on stuff like The Crimson Pirate with Burt Lancaster, I think in the 50s, and that's a bigger budget movie, right? And I think you see a similar trajectory with 80s, 90s Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's like, yes, Excalibur, sure. Yes, Lady Hawk, sure. These are not small budget films, but like fantasy and swashbuckle in the 80s often was kind of goofier and like more low budget and more kitschier. And then you get into the middle of the 90s, and there's still some of that. And we talked about that ahead of recording. We can get into that for sure. But you see this it's almost like all this stuff with business and Hollywood and any real business, honestly, that's been around for so long. You see the glint in the eye of any executive being like, okay, well, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves worked. So maybe can we get Richard Gere? Can we get Sean Connery?
Right. Yeah.
Can we do Camelot? Like, can we do, could we bring back the Mask of Zorro is one of like the first, the Mark of Zorro is like Fairbanks. I mean, that's like the 20s, that's
well,
like,
and right,
it does not get more.
And that even one was already, not unlike Robin Hood is recycled. It was Fairbanks and then it was Tyrone Power. And if you haven't seen the Tyrone Power version, that movie's great and funny. The Tyrone Power,
they're both really good. Yeah.
The Tyrone Power version of Mark of Zorro is interesting because when you watch, not to get slightly ahead of it, but when you watch Mask of Zorro, there are like whole sequences and pieces of imagery that are like direct that Martin Campbell like directly rips. But to your point, Dan, like, yeah, there's this thing of like, one of them is a hit. And in true Hollywood fashion, it's just like
well, it's just what is old is new again. I mean, you could,
absolutely.
And I just think it's just, it's always funny. And honestly, this is a larger macro POV. I honestly take comfort in stuff like that, like just as a human who's alive, of like just with the idea of.
I'm glad you're a human who's alive, Dan.
Yeah, me too.
Yes. You get that thing of like, this feels unprecedented, right? Like, where are we? This is scary. Not that it's not, right? And obviously I'm referencing bigger things here, but there is a comfort in getting in being educated and reading of history, whether it's movies or anything else, and learning like, okay, yes, this feels unprecedented and maybe it is in some ways, but a version of this has happened before and this is what happened. And and I think it's interesting from a commerce point of view, even of what we're talking about, of like, you almost see the trajectory of the 40s into the 50s into the 60s happening just in a truncated time frame. Like you said, Connor, by the time At World's End comes out, you kind of have this moment of like, I guess people don't really like these movies anymore.
A little, right. It's this interest. And I just I like those first two Pirate sequels. I think they're fun. Granted, I think my enjoyment of them has grown in 2020 hindsight, frankly, right? Like just retroactively, they feel big and a little weird and crazy in a way that, a lot of stuff made certainly at that budget range feels more stale. So I have come to enjoy those movies more. But yeah, it's kind of impossible to deny the relative simplicity of like the first Pirates of the Caribbean, even to the two immediate sequels, right? Like again, at least insofar as we're talking about the genre, like you have the Ghost Pirates or whatever, but like it's still a pretty straightforward swashbuckler, right? Like if you watch something like the Seahawk or Captain Blood or whatever, right? Like there's a general narrative to it that you're like, yeah, sure. Like, and the Ghost Pirates is almost just a nice little, some nice ketchup on it or whatever, it's seasoning. But yeah, I think it's funny that, just to go back to what you were saying, Dan, about like, you have the success of something like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And that wasn't sort of one of the initial movies we talked about mentioning. So I didn't really dive in too much about like how that movie came to be per se, like how that became such a touch point. But I do think it's interesting that like after that movie, right, you get Disney's Three Musketeers, right, with Chris O'Donnell and Kiefer, thank you, Kiefer Sutherland and Charlie Sheen and Oliver Platt. And I think I rewatched that movie. I think it works in some ways. I think Chris O'Donnell, bless his heart, just was never going to be the guy, was never going to be the guy people wanted him to be. So as a D'Artagnan, he's kind of whatever. But I do think what is interesting is to see even like there is and I think it's Rod Stewart. There is a like 3-way ballad for that song, right? And I believe it's Robbie Williams, Rod Stewart,
Isn't it
and
All for Love,
Sting.
One for All?
Yeah. That's
Sting,
the song.
Rod
And,
Stewart. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dan, please fact check me on this. But I think that is who it is. But I do think it's interesting.
Oh, and funny enough, soundtrack is by Michael Kamen, who did the soundtrack for Prince of Thieves.
We should know it. Prince of Thieves has one of the most incredible scores. The main overture to if you haven't heard it,
I don't know that the whole score.
If you haven't heard it, listener, the overture
you have heard it. It's the Castle Rock overture. Yeah.
No, it's Morgan Creek. The Morgan Creek. It went on to become the Morgan Creek logo.
All for Love.
All for Love. Thank you.
Performed by Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, and Sting. Written by Bryan Adams.
I said Robert. Why did I
say
that's
Robert? Interesting. Yeah. Bryan Adams, because of
Bryan Adams.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's this fascinating thing where they're clearly
I do for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're like, this thing worked, right? Great. Right.
This is just, and we can bring it back to Jen. I'm sure you want to talk about the specific movies. Let me loop back and one more fact check. Swashbuckler.
All right.
Sure.
Etymology, just based on terse research. Compound of swash, archaically meaning to swagger with a drawn sword. There are other meanings in that milieu. There's like more seafaring meanings, but simply put, to swagger with a drawn sword. And buckler was what a small shield was called, like with a fist.
Okay.
Back in I'm reading here, like the 16th century. So, it basically means a guy who has a sword and a shield, right? Like, and
swaggers around
and is being playful. So
great. Yes. There we
quite
go.
Literally, I mean, that's
what you look
Errol Flynn to me,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's what you look forward to when you go to watch one of these things. But yeah, you have like these little sort of, we should mention there's like the Michael Wincott of it all, a character actor who really popped in the 90s, still shows up every once in a while.
But so obviously he's in The Count of Monte Cristo. He's in Robin Hood, but he's also in Three Musketeers.
So it's this. My point is, it's just he's just this dude who was like, and again, this is not really even a swashbuckler, but even at this time, Ridley Scott made 1492 Conquest of Paradise, and Michael Wincott pops up in that in a very similar role. So he was just a dude who like had this thing about him, but he pops up in both Robin Hood and then Musketeers, which I guess to my point is just like they're kind of pulling all the things, right? They're just like, what worked in this thing really well? Like, what can we move over here? I would believe maybe they offered Cardinal Richelieu to Alan Rickman and he turned it down and they went to Tim Curry. You know what I mean? Like it feels like they're trying to like recycle parts. And what's interesting is at the end, spoilers, I guess, for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. At the end of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, King Richard shows up, and who plays King Richard? It's Sean Connery, right? And so there's this interesting bit of like Connery clout.
That's what we were talking about. There's so much Connery in this world
that he trickles through these movies.
Highlander,
yes,
that's a good point. Of course,
that's a great point. But
we were talking about because it's like Highlander, which I totally forgot about. Actually, that's a great point. Highlander.
He played Robin Hood and Robin and Marion.
Right, Robin and Marion. And then Highlander, and then the cameo at the end of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, he plays Richard Lionheart. And then it's like King Arthur in First Night in 95, Draco the Dragon in Dragonheart, the voice in
I think
96.
also
96?
Okay.
And then I guess that's kind of it. But then even when you think about when you're bringing in The Matrix, which is a different type of an action adventure, but like they wanted him to play Morpheus, right? Like
right.
He was always being asked.
He was almost in Lord of the Rings. He was almost
right. They wanted him to be,
and then he settles ultimately for Alan Quartermain. In League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
It's funny,
which kind of could be considered that's more on the like Mummy Phantom side of like these movies that we're talking about, but like definitely part of that ilk, and he hated the experience so much that then he finally retired. But I do think it's funny because he like pops up, and even in First Night, I will say, just to kind of get to it. So we all like this movie, right?
What do you think, Jen?
I love it. Yeah,
First
I actually saw it in the theater when it was new. I remember seeing it. I loved it. Yeah.
Could it actually? Okay, you saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
Okay,
I saw it on video. I
Me
like rented
too.
it from Blockbuster.
My mom, it's well documented on the B-side podcast. Julie Mecca is a Richard Gere is she loves. So
My mom too.
right, we've talked
Our
about this, I
moms would
think.
be friends. Yeah.
Oh God, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Just a mere, was it 2,000 miles, 2,500 miles between them? What was I going to say? Oh, so yeah, she I think must have seen it in theaters, but it was an easy rental at home, and it blew me away as a kid. And it's funny to watch it now. But before I get into that, do you remember what your theater experience was like? Was it like well attended? Do you have any memory of that?
I think I saw it at like the Dollar Theater, I will
Okay.
say, for whatever reason. I don't know that it lasted long.
It did.
A lot happened that year. There was so much out, but we saw it in like the Dollar Theater, and people really enjoyed the hell out of it. Yeah, I think it played really well. We were big fans of Julia Ormond already because of like Sabrina, which
Legends
I
of the
love.
Fall.
Legends of the Fall.
Right,
Yeah. So
she is very good in the movie.
Yeah,
actually,
she is good. It's one of those things where she played an Audrey Hepburn type or a character, but it's kind of that thing where they partner her with somebody like at least 25 or 30 years older.
Right.
And, we're supposed to buy that Lancelot and Arthur, there's a big gulf between them in age, and it doesn't really appear to be.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that's what me and Connor were laughing about that. Richard Gere is 45 when they shoot it.
Right. Okay.
And he's got long hair. He's a great looking guy.
Look, we should say he looks great.
Oh my God, he looks amazing. Yeah, he's one of those annoying guys who got better looking with age. And you're like, what? Yeah.
But he doesn't look like, he looks a little younger, but like he looks 40. Right? Yeah. It's not like he's not like, he doesn't not playing like 30. And then Ormond is like obviously young. She's like you said, she is an ingenue of some repute. And then even though Connery is almost 20 years older than Gere, it is they have this like peer thing. And it's kind of a mistake of casting.
I do think they have good chemistry though.
They do.
No, I think all three of them have good chemistry.
Yeah. And Gere, I think, wins you over a little bit. And just for the listener, I mean, it's a kind of a mishmash. First Night is of a couple different Arthurian legends.
Oh yeah.
I think that, if Excalibur is basically largely taken from Mort Arthur, right? This is sort of taken from a couple different other poems that I think I was kind of loosely looking into it. I think maybe
that's interesting.
Preceded Mort Arthur. Yeah, it's like not part of the same story necessarily. So it's taken from a couple different things, and it's kind of a hybrid of a few different.
Well, can we use this? We were kind of chatting about this ahead of time. Okay, so specifically, and I know Three Musketeers isn't one of our movies, but specifically, Three Musketeers, I guess a little Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and then most especially First Night, and then maybe a little The Man in the Iron Mask, which
I rewatched that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, which is it's so let me just. It's interesting to rewatch these films and rethink of them and discuss them where like production design, costume design, right? There is this like Renaissance fair quality to all of those films that I think it's interesting to watch, and I have nostalgia for it. It certainly feels hokey on its face to watch now to some degree, though it warms my heart. And it's funny to think about Braveheart's happening at the same time.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying before.
Rob Roy.
And Rob Roy. So there's this like down and dirty thing that's kind of creeping up, and even The Matrix, like we're talking about, it's different, but that's its own like it's new. But
Gladiator
it's old.
in 2000, right?
Gladiator's the culmination where it's like, okay, well, it's still traditional storytelling and it's a Spartacus thing, but there's blood, there's dirt.
Yeah,
there's no BS.
He's got maggots in his wound, right?
And just like the idea of like of First Night coming out only 5 years before Gladiator is like
the Ren Fair thing is a real thing. It feels there's a cosplay nature to it.
Cosplay,
almost.
exactly right. Yes.
That I don't. Yeah, I agree. I don't hate. I find it kind of nice to look at, if I'm being honest.
Well, and it harks back to like the Vikings with Kirk Douglas, the Crimson Pirate I mentioned. Like I have fondness.
You could
for
almost
those,
credit to Costner and Kevin Reynolds. I'll say this: when you watch Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, it feels less like that than First Night.
That's why I hesitated when I said it.
That one's actually pretty dark.
It gets
pretty
real
good.
gnarly. Like
yeah,
and you can almost feel them being like. You could almost feel Costner being like, I'm not wearing the green tights. I'm not wearing that dumb hat. I'm not like, they're like purposefully being like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And what's interesting when you contrast, Excalibur with First Night is Excalibur, there's potions and witches and spells. And they decided to kind of just do away with that and tell it very straightforward. With First Night, I am not a huge fantasy person, so that kind of appealed more to me. Yeah,
I agree. I like fantasy, but I like Excalibur a lot.
But that's a lot of fun.
I do think what I like about First Night, first and foremost, and I do think the gear of it all is crucial because I honestly. Like the only, and you're not going to get this person, but the only other person I could think of that would have been more appropriate would have been like a Tom Cruise or something like that. Like, but you're just
bring back the legend hair.
Yeah. Oh my God. Could you imagine? He is literally I think the only one who could have done the Lancelot role. Been charmed, like because even if I'm thinking of Julian Armand,
Christian Slater. No, I'm trying to.
Slater could have done it.
Tim Roth. I don't know.
Maybe could have done it.
I mean, Slater's in Prince of Thieves.
Yeah.
Honestly, you could maybe toss it to Kilmer, bring back Mad Mardigan.
Yeah.
Like
Kilmer would have been good.
Kilmer would have been a great.
Kilmer would
Lancelot.
have been good. Yeah.
But all that said, I do think they all still have really good chemistry. But the thing that I think is crucial is like it's a little bit more not rom-com-y, but it's a little bit more of like an earnest romantic drama than it is a swashbuckler. And there is some good buckling swash, but like
it's very soapy. Yeah.
Yes.
Very soapy.
And I think like weirdly you kind of need the gear of it to key that in people's brains, right? Like when it's gear with wavy hair, you know what you're watching versus like.
And to sell some of those lines, like, I know when a woman wants me.
Yeah.
I mean, you need gear to say that.
If it's not gear saying that, you're like, ew, buddy. But like when gear says it,
you're like Kurt Russell, really? Like, yeah.
Right.
And we should also say that, Jerry Zucker directed this, which, he's 1/3 of Zucker.
Yeah.
And it's, this is his follow-up. If I'm not mistaken, I'm double checking myself. This is his follow-up to a little movie you might have heard of it called Ghost.
Yep.
Yes, it is. So like when you think of the
Swayze could have been Lancelot.
Swayze would have been good. Even Tony Goldwyn, if we're talking
Tony Goldwyn, that's
true.
When you think of the masterful tonal dance that Ghost does, which is like a lot of people underrate Ghost, and I get it, right? But that is such an incredible film for what it accomplishes tonally, because it's like very funny, very soapy, Jen, as you said, and like totally you're in it. Like it's an incredible romance, right?
Yep.
So you can totally see Jerry Zucker being like, you know what, can I take this and can I take this alchemy and bring it to Camelot and see if it works? And I think for audiences, it obviously doesn't work quite as well, but I think 30 years later, 29 years later, you're like, I have a lot of appreciation for it, and like we're talking.
Well, there's also like
gear
the score. The score. It's a classy film. Yeah. Also, you have Ben Cross playing the villain.
I know, which I like.
Great. Who is great. I also love the production design, like the costume design.
Yes, the costume.
Of like he looks like a Super Mario Fortress kind of like with
the chain link and
the like it's just this you can like he immediately reads as bad guy. It's a thing that I love that like 80s 90s swashbucklers would be like the bad guy has kind of a jagged sword. You know what I mean? It's like they're like little things like that where it's like he doesn't have a normal sword. It's gonna have some
black
teeth.
hat, white hat, but like for swashbuckling.
Exactly. And like I do want to talk about Connery quickly because I think he's
good.
Very good in this movie. And I think
understated and
and I think he kind of doesn't, not that he was like the world's most gifted thespian or anything, but I do think his general movie star stature does make you kind of not stop to think about what he's doing as a performer sometimes. And there is a moment in a garden with him and Julia Ormond where there's like a horse that one of the attendants is like trying to break, and it's going to be Julia Ormond's horse, and they're kind of have this they're having it's a very obvious conversation, but it's like they're talking about the wild horse, but it's not about the horse, it's about Julia Ormond, right? And he kind of has this moment where he's like, hey, like, maybe I know I'm king and you could love me because I'm a nice guy as king.
But I'm old,
like,
right?
But I'm old. And like, could you all, I've never, like, could you also just love me as a man? And like, to see him try to do
vulnerable.
that to
Very
be vulnerable.
yeah.
But even just internally, like he's like, because he doesn't say what I just said. He's like saying it very coded, but it's all in his face. And it's like, I was supremely impressed. I was like, good, Sean, buddy. Like it was, I was really, it's.
And if you think in comparison, and I like this movie too, but in comparison to Entrapment, which is a fun movie, but I mean, Connery is, I think,
he's checked out.
He's giving you, he's giving you Sean, right? It's just kind of like, and I think, Catherine Zeta-Jones, co-star of Mask of Zorro, she's really kind of running with that ball, anchoring that movie. God bless her, and I think
not dissimilar to like him and Nicolas Cage in The Rock a little bit, where like I think Connery's very good in The Rock, but he's excelling at being Sean Connery, right?
Yeah,
like
he's just doing his
and
thing.
doing everything, right? Whereas this, I do think is like
you're right.
He's like actually activating
it's a performance
muscles, and so I don't know. He kind of
it also begs the question of like, I mean, this is so. But like Jerry Zucker, got Whoopi an Oscar. Like, was he? I wonder if the comedy element of his. I would be curious to hear him talk about it. Like, did he just connect with Connery in a way? Did he let Connery or like open something on set that Connery was willing to be more, open?
Yeah.
Like, it's funny to think about it because it's like, Connery was famously tough with directors, challenging, smart guy, high functioning, came in with a lot of kind of questions and plans. And it's interesting that a guy like Jerry Zucker, kind of cracked this performance. And not to say anything against him, just it's just not funny pairing,
you wouldn't expect someone who made Airplane to unlock James Bond as an actor, right? Or whatever. Like it's
interesting.
But yeah, and then after this, speaking of Connery, like you have things like Dragonheart, which that's
Jen, have you ever seen Dragonheart?
Dragonheart?
I think I did back in the day.
That was a $1 theater movie for me for sure.
I think me too. Yeah. Dennis Quaid got to be the worst.
Look, sorry,
like we love Dennis.
Sorry,
Reagan himself, but he It's just an absolutely awful performance. I mean, I don't know what you could say about it.
I will say Connery for his part, and it probably didn't ask a lot of him. So like, I don't know how much of a lift it is, but I do think Connery gives a pretty good voice performance in that as the dragon. And on paper, I think that movie is fun. As a rewatch, I was prepared to be let down, and I sort of was. But I remember really loving that movie as a kid.
It's fascinating because I mentioned to you guys, it's set in right before the year 1000.
Yeah.
And they have references to things that happen well beyond that, which is funny, which is whatever. But it's interesting because I'm reading this book. And actually, I will shout out the authors because I hate to not do that. This book, it's literally called The Year 1000 by Danny Danziger and Robert Lacey. And it's literally a total big recommend for any nonfiction fans. It's like these two historians write a book and it just like contextualizes what life would have been like for different classes of people in the year 1000 in kind of what would become England, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. You're just like, oh yeah, like okay, this is what the house would have been built of. Like, what was a church like back then? Okay, it was what was a scandal like back then, right? What was an argument, and they're telling you where they're pulling these things from, and it's fascinating, the research itself. Anyway, so it's funny to watch Dragonheart because I'm like reading that and like watching this obviously incredibly fictionalized.
Well, it does the interesting thing of like it sets itself in the fictionalized universe of that time, right? Because like Dragonheart doesn't take place in England. It does, you know what I mean? Like they never.
No, yeah, Fantasyland, where it's it becomes a buddy movie about a knight and his dragon, and it's so anyway, it doesn't really work. God knows, I don't think it really did well. But it's funny though. Speaking of these
made
scores,
like 4 sequels or something like that.
Well, but here's
the score.
What's funny about all these movies we've been talking about,
The
and
Randy
I guess
Edelman score to Dragonheart is beautiful.
Yeah, and so First Night, I suppose, is an exception because that score is fine, Jared Goldsmith, but it's not it's not remembered the same way. But like Three Musketeers, Michael came in for that and for Robin Hood, and then Randy Edelman for Dragonheart. The theme for Dragonheart, Jen, you would know 100%.
It got like used in trailers.
It was used in like
20
trailers up until like 10 years ago. It was used in like Oscar clip montages, more than one. And it's just so funny because you would remember that song, score a million times over more than you would remember Dragonheart. And it's just, it makes you laugh of like, there's not that many examples of that, but I always love when that happens.
Yeah,
when you're kind of like,
well, I do feel like the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves thing is kind of like that. Like if
maybe, but that was a big hit. Like the Bodyguard people always mention, but like Bodyguard was also a big hit. I guess the song is bigger, but it's like, like Dragonheart was not a hit. It just makes me laugh. It's just like it wasn't, and it is just a.
Did First Night? I'm looking now. Did First Night have like a?
It had like a Goldsmith like.
No, I knew it had a Goldsmith. I was wondering if it had a movie song. If it had.
Oh, I didn't look it up.
I don't think it.
I don't think
it does.
No.
Jen's a connoisseur of. Did Bryan Adams write a song? Well, Bryan Adams was busy. Bryan Adams was, not to get all Barbara nerdy on us.
Oh, right.
Bryan Adams was busy then because he was writing the theme for a little movie called The Mirror Has Two Faces. Oscar nominated, very good song. Bryan Adams sings it, well, of course, with Barbara. Of course, naturally. But what do you, Jen? During this time, I'm curious. What was the standout? And we can use this as like a springboard to another movie. What was like of these swashbuckly adjacent movies? What was like a standout for young Jen? Do you remember?
I mean, I don't know. Can we put Braveheart in this mix? But Braveheart might be its own thing. That was a huge one.
Was that a huge one for you?
I feel like that's more of a historical epic if I was going to like classify it. But
then I would say First Night probably was. I did love the next film, Mask of Zorro. I remember going to that. I think we went back to the theater once or twice.
Yeah.
Just being totally transfixed. I had already been a huge fan of Antonio Banderas from years of movies, but Catherine Zeta-Jones was amazing. Of course, this is the movie where Michael Douglas became like a reply guy, where he saw it and then he like saw her at a party. He sent over Danny DeVito to like start talking to her first as a wingman, and then walked up and just said, "I want you to have my children," and it turned her off. And then he had to send all these like flowers.
I can't imagine why.
The creepiest fucking thing. But anyway,
No, I was just gonna say, I just have to say that is such a good, when people like Hugh Grant and like famous people try to contextualize like it's so weird being famous. People don't understand, which I think is an earnest and right thing to try to explain to people. It doesn't forgive anything, but I do think it's always important. Everybody lives their own life. You got to walk a mile in somebody else's moccasins, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no better example of like the world Michael Douglas is living in is different than the world you're living in. Then he went to see a movie with a stunning woman and was like, you know what I'll do? I'm going to marry her. So what I'll do is I'll go home and I'll figure out what party she's at, and I'll send my best friend movie star Danny DeVito to that party. And then I'll just tell her we'll get together. And then like it doesn't work. He's like, well, no, it has to obviously work. So I'll just keep doing things until and it worked. And they're still married. It's like
and they're
crazy.
still together. Yeah. It is wild. Like not to get like too nitty gritty with this movie, but I do think, and I won't speak for Dan, this was a formative movie for me as a young man watching movies, like Catherine Zeta-Jones specifically. And so like,
I mean, I have to admit it for me it was always entrapment with that. I mean,
sure. But
I take no pride in saying it.
This might've been the stepping stone, I guess is the thing. But yeah, I think this movie, which is directed by Martin Campbell, who is just such a sturdy action director. You could trust him with basically.
I saw someone on Twitter saying, and I wish I could remember, like they don't make Martin Campbell's anymore.
Not really.
Don't.
And like
you can't go to the store and grab a Martin Campbell.
The closest you get is like a Wame Syrah, maybe.
Yeah, but he's been doing it for 20 years. You know what I mean? It's not even like
it's
it's like, yes, Wame Syrah, yes, okay. Yeah. But like even he's made like 12 movies. Like it's like
it wasn't supposed and just to prove the true workmanship of Martin Campbell, and I mean that as a
he got thrown
compliment. He got thrown onto it. It was supposed to be Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And Rodriguez dropped out and Campbell took over. And I think, and no disrespect to Rodriguez, I think Desperado is a great action movie. I think Zorro probably still would have been a great action movie if Rodriguez directed it, but
it would have been a totally different thing.
Yes. I think a lot of the beautiful classicism to this movie is Martin Campbell being like, no, we're making a Zorro movie. And like, you get the elder statesman, Anthony Hopkins, for your money. Hopkins, I think, is great in this movie. And there's a moment in rewatching it. I much to the annoyance of a few friends that were at my apartment when I was watching it, there's a moment in this movie where you get to see, it's a passing of the torch movie where Hopkins is almost like he is Tyrone Power kind of thing, right? Like is almost the thought, like he is the Zorro maybe we've known for a while and he's passing on the mantle, as it were.
He's got the brown face. He's got the side.
Well, he's got like
I'm kidding.
It's funny because Brittany and I talked about this and and granted we were maybe equivocating a little bit, but he was like, well, he is a Spaniard. So like he can be white. I don't like maybe.
No, I'm mostly just kidding. It
is a little, this movie toes a lot of lines in that regard.
Yeah, it's also a little like rapey, like with the undressing. I mean, it was sexy at the time, but you watch it.
No, you're watching.
Oh my god!
Oh, with the sword. Yes.
Which again is why I begrudgingly described it as like a formative movie for me. But
it's like if Rudolph, they dress him like they make him up like if Rudolph Valentino was 60.
Exactly that. But I do think he's good, and he has this sword fight in the beginning of the movie where they try and make him look young. It doesn't really work. He's got like
it's great.
He has got a beautifully atrocious wig in the beginning of this movie when he plays like young Zorro. It's great. But there's a shot that's just a very simple master shot up a stairwell of the two of these dudes fighting, and I like had to pause it for a second because I was just so moved. I was like, nobody would ever shoot a sword fight like this now.
No.
Like nobody. And like, but Campbell and like Robert Rodriguez probably would not. But Campbell knows, like, no, we're making a swashbuckler. Like, you need this shot. You need the big stairwell. You need the candelabras on the side. You need almost, they're not quite silhouetted, but there is this beautiful backlighting behind these two guys as they're fighting on this staircase. And it's a beautiful, like, calling your shot moment for the movie to be like, hey, like, this is what you're in for. Like, this is the shit I'm about to give you. And what's great, though, is that when you bring Banderas into it and he's more young, more virile, can do more, it's this beautiful thing where, like I mentioned before, Campbell kind of calls back to a few different things in the Tyrone Power Mark of Zorro. Set piece wise, like there's the moment in the church where he poses as the priest and he hears her confession and she's talking about him and all that stuff, and that's great. But then it later then turns into this chase sequence that turns into like a horseback chase sequence that is in the mark of Zorro, but Campbell is like, cool, we're going to do that same scene, but we're going to like jack it up to 11 a little bit in terms of like the stunts and what people are going to be doing on horseback. And so I think it's just this, to me, more so than a lot of the movies we're going to talk about in this era, it is like the most beautiful synthesis of past and present, of like, here are the things that are incredible about this genre that we love stylistically, athletically, whatever you want to call it, but also like, this is what modern filmmaking looks like. Right. And so that's why I think this movie works really well, because Campbell recognizes that he's not just making a swashbuckler, he's making a sexy romance, but he's also kind of making a superhero film. So there are these very like Batmanified moments, where like dude opens the doors and he sees the giant flaming Z in his field.
Well, also this
like
movie,
things like that are very
also no other movie of these films more succinctly merges kind of the serial IP that was getting it updated, right? The Shadow, the Phantom, the Rocketeer.
Yeah.
You could put Zorro.
Michael Solomon was also one of the almost directors for this.
And you could put Zorro in that camp of like serial adventures.
Yeah. Right. It's right there. Yeah.
And then also transport him. It's funny just as we're talking about this, and I thought of this watching rewatching Zorro. They didn't redo Pimpernel. They didn't do the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
And it's a hard, and I feel like I've said this on one of our B-side podcasts. It's kind of an impossible character to do now, because the whole thing with Pimpernel is he's like saving rich people.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's a complicated political moment in France. So it's like, I feel like if you did the Scarlet Pimpernel now, you'd have to like
explain.
You'd have to, or you'd have to be like more of like a Robin Hood.
Well, it's an interesting.
So maybe that's why,
because Costner runs into that with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, right? Reynolds and Costner do, and there's a lot. That movie does a lot of legwork to like rid him of the, and it works basically. And even this movie, right? Like traditionally, Zorro is like also a Don. Right, like he is also a rich man, and so there's the
and Anthony Hopkins' character is a Don.
Is it right? And so, but in this, Banderas there's almost they counter it because he's a poor man who gets elevated to. It's almost, not to again jump ahead, but it's almost a little Count of Monte Cristo-y, kind of dovetailed with Robin Hood in a weird. Yeah,
way. It's smart. I mean, and I guess this is my point. It's like it's always fascinating to watch how it happens. I mean, with Campbell, it's also interesting because I think they offered him Tomorrow Never Dies, right? Because I think he was like, I'm not going to make another Bond movie, and then kind of in a moment of need, he makes The Mask of Zorro, which is not Bond, but it's like in that vein. And I just find that
an adventure movie. It's a
and he gets in the Chris O'Donnell business with Vertical Limit.
Oh, right. He made Vertical Limit
in 2000, which I saw in theaters and loved.
I did as well. I will. And this is the thing. I think Campbell as an image maker, I think is incredible. Like, and he's not, he's not an auteur. He's not one of those people, but like, like I mentioned, there are sequences in this movie that are indelible images for me where I'm like, oh my God, it just looks incredible. And even in GoldenEye, God knows, Casino Royale, right? Like there are certain things that you're like, granted, James Bond's, it's a little easier because it's already iconic imagery or whatever to some extent. But yeah, like Vertical Limit, the opening of Vertical Limit is like, Jen, have you seen Vertical Limit?
When it was new. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I won't even spoil it necessarily, but listener, the opening of Vertigo is harrowing. Is like it's an insane way to open a movie. It's a little bit like Campbell watched Cliffhanger, which is a crazy way to open a movie.
Well, no, it's not as crazy as Cliffhanger.
The sequence itself is not as crazy, but it climaxes in a way that's a little crazier than Cliffhanger because
Rennie Harlan and Martin Camp, and also we should say I can't believe this didn't come up in our conversation.
Yeah.
we're not going to talk about Cutthroat Island.
Right. Sure. Rennie Harlin.
Which we don't need. Obviously, we don't need to talk about. But Rennie Harlin came on the B-side podcast. I would put him in the camp of a Martin Campbell to some degree.
Definitely.
Kind of a very, workman. That's not a diss.
No,
A sturdy filmmaker. But in that movie, it's literally like, speaking of Errol Flynn, Matthew Modine is basically doing Errol Flynn, but then the kind of bit in Cutthroat Island is like, he's full of shit, and it's Gina Davis who's running the show.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is not unlike Three Musketeers, or any of these movies, really.
Yeah.
Not unlike Three Musketeers or First Night or Dragonheart. It's a good idea. It doesn't really congeal as well, but
I like that movie. I like that movie for the scope of it. Like I think that movie. Jen, have you seen Cutthroat Island?
I went to the press screening, weirdly enough.
Yeah. You did?
Yeah. What was that
hang on. Wait, let's just.
What was the reaction?
Jen,
what was the temperature in the room?
It was at the Mall of America.
Amazing.
And so they were giving away extra tickets but it was at the same one as the press screening. So I remember studying people walked out of that movie like they had dental surgery. One did not do well. I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah, I feel like people were meaner to movies.
Go ahead, Jen. Sorry. Finish your. I want to hear you thought it was entertaining, but
I thought it was entertaining as a kid. But I think I was with my parents and maybe my grandma, and they were just like, okay, next one we're choosing.
Yeah.
Like, all right. That one did not do very well. But yeah. And the press were
right. Well, of course. Nobody liked it.
That. Yeah. But I love Gina Davis as a kid. And so I do remember that. But okay, yeah. Rennie Harlin, Martin Campbell. But I couldn't believe when I was looking this up that Michael Solomon, he wound up directing Camelot and episodes of that TV show and Rome. And so it's like he probably would have been a good director of this. It was when Spielberg was developing Zorro as a producer. But I agree with what you guys were all saying about, as much as I love Rodriguez, I think he would have made it his own Robert Rodriguez picture instead of a Zorro film, for sure.
There would have been more of a, not your not your daddy Zorro type of a thing.
Yes,
exactly. Which I think is cool. I mean, I like that idea.
That's a totally
but it's just a different thing. And I think Banderas is so good in that role. And it's funny when you think about Banderas' career as an American movie star kind of gets it gets a little hindered by these movies kind of not holding on. I mean, and ironically, something like The 13th Warrior is kind of in, the end of the century is kind of it's kind of McTiernan taking the piss out of these stories. Literally. It's like, if you've seen The 13th Warrior, it's almost what we're talking about. It's like Beowulf, but no fantasy. Right. Let's just and there's a little fantasy, but it's kind of, and it almost weirdly is, despite it being one of the biggest flops in the history of Hollywood, it kind of, the Braveheart success that, Rob Roy to a lesser extent that leads to 13th Warrior, and then Gladiator, you get this like down and dirty, right? And we won't get into it because that's not what this is about, but it's fascinating just to chart it, where then it's like, they do King Arthur again, but there's no magic, and it's all like in the dirt. Clive Owen, Keira Knightley, they do Troy, right? But it's like there's no god. There's gods, but they're just kind of like our gods. Like there's Achilles is just a man, and like his mythology is kind of more like it's more like gossip, right? And it's like that's interesting when you think about where we start in the late 80s, and then that kind of goes away. So it's funny to chart that. If that had all lasted longer, I feel like Banderas, he would have been like an easier dunk for more of those roles, if he was willing to take them,
No, and it's interesting because like there is and I don't want to jump off Zorro just yet, but I do think that's a good segue, right? Like into Count of Monte Cristo, because I think when you look at like the aesthetic differences between Zorro and Count of Monte Cristo, they're all in that Venn diagram of movies that you just talked about, right? Like it's not that Count of Monte Cristo doesn't have fun being a swashbuckler, but it is decidedly more like it's a little darker, it's a little less romantic. I mean, it's still romantic, but it's very much just more like it's a little colder, it's dirtier, right? And what I like about Zorro, and like I said, I think it's this beautiful kind of meeting in the middle of all these things, and why it still endures is like I love that it's still lit like an Errol Flynn movie, right? Like I love that like there's just this, you know, beautifully palpable sexual tension between the two leads, right? Like you have all these things that I think help the movie fire on all cylinders. And as these movies go on, I think they kind of pivot more towards just, you know, rather than doing the Martin Campbell thing of being like, I'm just going to try and make a classic version of this thing and see how it goes. They try and more directly pivot towards other things that people can latch on to because they liked, right? Like, and I think when you get to something like Count of Monte Cristo, it's doing that. It's like it's kind of coming after the gladiators, right? And it's doing this thing where it's going to tell you Count of Monte Cristo in sort of an abridged kind of way. But
well, and if you look up the trailer for Count of Monte Cristo, right? And we talked to Guy Pearce actually on the B side about this a little bit. They sell it like it's an action picture, you know?
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah.
It's not really, you know.
No, it's a thriller.
It's a romance revenge, you know. It's not, you know.
And it still has. I mean, I love it because it still has all these great elements, right? Like, you know, the score is it right in line with all these kinds of movies. What is funny is there are bits of the score in Count of Monte Cristo that I feel like Klaus Badell uses a little bit in the first in the first Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, I mentioned to you guys, I mentioned the guy who wrote the screenplay for Count of Monte Cristo, Jay Wolpert.
Yeah. Oh,
He gets credit. He gets screen story credit on Pirates 1, and he gets character credit for all of the sequels. And he's since passed, sadly, in 22, I think 2022. But he was like an older guy, TV guy, long time. And yeah, you can almost see some of like what becomes Pirates in Count of Monte Cristo. It's kind of a funny thing. And it's nobody believed in Count of Monte Cristo, like Guy Pearce talked, you know, like it came out in the early months of 2002. They pushed it back. I don't think there was a lot of faith in it. You know, I think it was a success. They sold it well. I would definitely went to the theater.
I think it's also one of those movies. I think this movie like crushed on DVD.
Oh yeah,
I think it did like okay in theaters and then like did really well
and directly resulted in that Tristan and Isolde movie getting made.
Yeah.
Which was
also
Kevin Reynolds.
Yeah.
And I will never forget what I love about the marketing for that movie. It's like 2 years later, 3 years later, it's James Franco. And I think it's Sophia Myles, who's like a young actress. The way they sold that movie was before Romeo and Juliet, there was Tristan and Isolde, which I just like, I love the idea of like juniors in high school being like, oh, well, I like Romeo and Juliet. I love the marketing discussion. Like, I get why you do it, but it just makes me laugh where it's like, well, I like Leo and Claire Danes in that movie. Maybe we should go see Tristan and Isolde.
I just think it's so funny because like Count of Monte Cristo, like we said, it's Kevin Reynolds who directed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Yeah. So it does feel, you know, that feels like an easy, if you're like, he was their first call. And if he didn't pick up, they were going to call Martin Campbell, right? Like it's almost like all these movies we talked about at some point, somebody was going to get called to like make this movie. And I was saying to Jen before we started recording that like, I don't know if either of you have read Count of Monte Cristo, but it does not end the way this movie ends. And what I love about, you said Jay Wolpert, right?
Jay Wolpert, yeah.
It's the screenwriter. I remember when I got this movie on DVD, it was that time where like, you get a DVD and you watch all the things on it, right? Or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a studio approved featurette or something on it. But I remember there's a bit with Jay Wolpert in there where he talks about writing the screenplay and he talks about the changes he made. And whatever, I guess I could spoil it because it's Count of Monte Cristo. It's like the oldest thing in the world. But, the Mercedes character, for instance, dies, and Edmond Dantes winds up marrying like someone who was a former servant, and the Henry Cavill character, who is then positioned to be his son, is never actually his son, right? And so there are these little tweaks that Wolpert makes under the hood that I think to me help the movie dramatically. Because you're just like, yeah, it's cleaner. It's more dramatically satisfying, like all of that. And so I remember on this feature, he was like, look, if someone likes the book and they watch this movie and they have a problem, what I would tell them is read the book. It's a great book.
Yeah.
And I've never forgotten that quote. Like anytime.
What I want the feature where he's like, any Pirates of the Caribbean, if anybody doesn't like the movie and they like the ride, I tell go on the ride.
Go on the ride. Yeah.
Great ride.
No,
it's a great ride.
But it is one of those things. It's like I've never forgotten that quote. Like when any kind of adaptation happens, where it's like, well, I don't know. You still have the book. Like
Yeah, I've never been a big fan. I wonder, Jen, how you feel about this. I've never been a big fan of the argument of like, oh, this ruined the original for me. What do you think about that?
I mean, so many of my friends write books, and Jordan Harper has a point on that, which is like the book is the book, the movie is the movie. They made She Rides Shotgun. He has no idea because he wrote a version of it. It's not the version. It's like different people have written different versions.
Sure,
so he has no idea. Just like, I know what I wrote and I'm excited to see the movie, but that's a whole different thing. So
right.
Yeah, it's
and I feel like
healthier attitude.
Well, that's the thing. Healthy is the exact word. It's like, what is the like? I don't know
what is to be gained from picking the two apart.
Exactly.
At a certain point, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's an art form. It's two different art forms. You
like
can
biopics having to be. It's like
exactly.
For instance, not to get off topic, but for instance, I recently watched the Napoleon director's cut.
Oh, right.
And I enjoyed it immensely. And I enjoy the theatrical cut immensely. And I remember when it came out last year, I was talking to a buddy who like has a degree in history.
Yeah.
And he like hated it. Right. And he was just kind of like, oh, well, this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, but like, is that dramatically satisfying to watch on a movie screen? Like, what are we talking about?
Right. Shit, like, no, but Napoleon went home in between. You're like, okay.
Yeah. It's like he didn't shoot at the pyramids. It's like, okay, but you know what looks cool in a movie? Yeah. Him shooting at the pyramid, right? Like
he didn't like Egypt.
It's that.
What was the? I just watched a movie where they. Oh, I'm gonna totally forget, but they basically do it where he stays. Oh my god, it's so frustrating. Oh yeah. Oh, Jen, we both like this movie, Young Woman in the Sea.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I was
totally
I was reading about the young woman. Amazing story. I cannot remember her name for the life of me right now, but incredible. 20s, swam the English Channel, the whole thing. Okay. In real life, she has a bad coach. She doesn't make the swim. Okay, bummer. She goes home for a year. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. In the movie,
more exciting.
Yeah, in the movie, smartly, she is in England and she's like, well, I'm here in England. I haven't had, or she's in France. Maybe she's like, I'm over here. I might as well see England, right? The idea being like, she's going to go again and stay here. It's like, yes. What are you going to have a scene where she goes back like a loser for a year? And then it's like, that sucks. It's like, you've already established this character having to overcome all these obstacles and you want her to like, park it back and like have an, it just doesn't make
and it's just all,
and her dad was gonna get her a sports car at the end in real life, and that's not how it plays in the movie because it's it's like, who cares about the sports car? Well,
and also like that's another example too of that's kind of a biopic, but it's almost more of like an event pick because like that woman the rest of her life and that and more power to this. And I'm going to find her name because we're talking about, but she had a very quiet, solitary life following those feats. Gertrude Ederle, is her name, Trudy Etterly. So you're not going to just show her for 70 years, like chilling in a house in New Jersey. It's like, yeah, the movie end. She did the swim. Good for her. Let's get out of here. Like, it's
Yeah.
No, and that's all to say, like, I appreciate any amount of sort of magic somebody wants to nip and tuck things behind the scenes to like make a thing just run better. And I mean, for the listener, I guess, if you're unfamiliar with Count of Monte Cristo, it's maybe one of the most classic adventure stories, right? Like, I don't know. Like,
certainly.
I don't know. Like, if you're it's like Robin Hood and
King Arthur,
right? King Arthur and right, like, and that Zorro, right? Like, it's like,
you could, Don Quixote, there's like 10 of them,
But yeah, it's basically Jim Caviezel plays Edmond Dantes, who's a sailor who essentially, unbeknownst to him, speaking of Napoleon, actually, I wasn't even trying to dovetail these things, but he winds up on Elba where Napoleon is exiled, and he sort of unwittingly carries a letter for Napoleon, sort of essentially committing treason. And he gets let off the hook, but then suddenly is like captured again, and he is sentenced to this place called Chateau d'If for 13 years, where he stays for 13 years. And his friend Count Mondego, who's played by Guy Pearce, who Dan mentioned we talked to on the B-side. We talked to him a little bit about this movie. Guy Pearce is so good in this movie. I think everybody's
actually like powers. I think a little bit. That's my one issue over Jim.
A little bit.
Yeah, Jim Caviezel.
That's a great.
Jim Caviezel. I think the problem, and I will say this, I do think, and this is important to the success.
Though Caviezel's handsome, huh?
I think this is important to the success of the movie. I think Caviezel does a better job, like at least exuding a kind of magnetism in the second half of the movie. Which is like, I think, crucial to its success, right? Because he becomes the count, right?
Yeah, the first half, I don't know. He was floundering a little.
He's a little drippy. And granted, I think it helps the movie because I think it's an element of like, you're like, oh, this dude Edmond Dantes is like not long for this.
He can't read, he can't write.
Yeah. You're like, all right, I'm not. He's in love with Mercedes, who's played by
Dagmara Domanchik.
Yeah, so good.
Who you know maybe more recently from Succession, or she's in Bottoms, I think, right? As
Priscilla. Yeah.
Priscilla. I forgot she was in that.
Yeah, wife married to Patrick Wilson.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, she's great, and basically Guy Pearce fucks Jim Caviezel over because he's in love with Mercedes. And Jim Caviezel goes to jail, right? While in jail, while he's being jailed by Michael Wincott, who's also great for a couple scenes in this movie, he winds up meeting Richard Harris, who essentially plays this former Bonapartist soldier who then became a priest and ultimately got locked away. And basically, Richard Harris teaches Edmund everything he knows. He teaches him how to read. He teaches him how to sword fight, all this stuff, while they're trying to dig their way out. And I think if I'm flying through this movie, it's mostly because I love this movie because it flies. It it moves so quickly through a lot of things. And Dan and I were talking about this a little bit. Like, Richard Harris is in this movie for 15 minutes. It feels like he's in the whole movie, right? Like he has this kind
of incredible.
He has this kind of presence that shows up and like recalibrates the movie and then kind of leaves a mark on it, I think, for everything after. And not just with Harris, but I think Reynolds does an incredible job with like the entire supporting cast in this movie in that regard, that like everybody who pops up, even if they're not somebody you recognize. So like whether it's Michael Wincott or later Luis Guzman, everybody who pops up.
James Frain is the other guy,
James Frain is good. Yeah.
James Frain's good.
James Frain is he's what's his character's name?
Oh, he's Villefort.
Villefort. He's very good. And I can't think of the actor who plays. There's an Italian pirate that Edmond Dantes hates when he escapes, and he's only in a couple scenes, but like he
has the great line read. Is that taught of the stories you
tell? Yeah, like but I guess my point is Reynolds is like smart enough to populate every scene with like memorable actors and memorable characters.
Yeah.
And I think it helps the movie greatly because even Wincott, who's not in a ton of the movie and who is the warden of the Chateau d'If, like, you know, he leaves an indelible mark. You're like, how can we personify how horrible this place is in one person? And like Michael Wincott with his gravelly voice and whatever is like so perfect for it. And even Luis Guzman, who becomes essentially, you know, Jim Caviezel's sort of second, his sidekick essentially, is incredible because it's this, he also gets to be like the audience surrogate. Like they escape, they get this treasure that Richard Harris told them about. And Edmond Dantes is immediately like, okay, I'm going to use it to get my revenge. And Guzman is like, well, no, we have this treasure. Why don't we just go kill everybody? And then we have the treasure. Like, what are we doing? Like, and it is this kind of beautiful moment. Cause like, as a viewer, you're like, yeah, you got probably the thing you need more. What are you doing? And so then he plans his revenge, but then you get into yet another montage in the movie of like him becoming a count. And it's this really like snappy, well executed thing. You have this beautiful sequence with a hot air balloon where he introduces himself to like the upper crust of society,
like the Cirque du Soleil people coming.
It's incredible. It's incredible. My wife made me rack it back because like she was sort of half paying attention.
It must have been Cirque du Soleil people, right?
It must have. But like he comes down in this hot air balloon with like fireworks behind it and shit. And Brittany made me rack it back because it ended because he steps out and he goes greetings, and then she was like, "Wait,"
walks away.
Like, she was like, "Did he just walk out of a fucking hot air balloon?" So like we had to rewind it, and she was like, "Oh my god, he really did that!" And
that was a big moment in the trailer. I remember.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, of course, they probably spent a lot of money on it.
Before airplanes, there was.
But to your point, Dan, what is interesting is like there is not a lot of buckling swash in this movie.
Yeah, the end,
I would classify it as a swashbuckler, but like there's the sword fight at Count Mondego's home when he initially gets betrayed, when Dantes
the training in the prison, and then the end. Yeah.
And then there's the end. But I will say it's like very well executed because it's, you're using Kevin Reynolds uses these set pieces as those stepping stones where like when he fights Guy Pearce in the beginning of the movie, he just gets the shit, like in a way that's like actually painful to watch. Like there are things that happen that you're like, well, don't do that, you dummy. Like you're just watching like the worst sword fighter in the world. And then by the time you watch them fight at the end, it's like an incredible sword fight.
And even formally, it's a low budget movie compared to stuff like Pirates of the Caribbean, which we'll get to in a minute. But like, Reynolds can stretch a dollar, as we know, on a higher on a higher plane.
Yeah.
And even like the dolly track shot at the end, right? It's a beautiful shot. Like they run the camera down while they're like in the field having a sword fight.
Yeah,
right?
incredible.
That's not an expensive thing on a set. I mean,
no, but he knows how to like use
dolly tracks aren't. They're the most common thing on any movie, right? It's like, but throwing the camera down it while they're running the other, and it's like that like action reaction kind of movement thing, like that costs you like the price of a normal crew, and it's like you could have done that shit in 1965, and in 2002, you're like, what? You're like.
Right, no,
like
he's like doing this. He's doing
like,
the same stuff Richard Lester is doing in his Three Musketeers, and like,
I think after Waterworld, people were like, "We're not giving you that kind of money again."
Yeah, right, of course,
that's true. Yeah. No, and Reynolds does constrict a little bit after that. That's true, and this is certainly other than maybe Hatfields and McCoy's his highest success. But I only say that to say. What Gore Verbinski then does the next year, with Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, and then even more so, Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, the sheer scope and accomplishment of those set pieces have aged those three movies so incredibly well
Yeah.
that like I ended up rewatching 1 and 2, and that just because I I was just like,
You were having a good time.
I was just gonna keep watching these movies. These are great movies, and like just the one-upsmanship. And look, they had every dollar you could I mean, once Black Pearl was the hit it was, right, and it was a shock of shocks. You know, you could not have given more money to Dead Man's Chest, right? So it's like you can do everything you want. Like they spent weeks shooting that wheelbarrow scene, right? It's like, so it's not like you can just do this, right? You need every resource imaginable. But my God, they make use of them. I mean, those set pieces, like Connor, you're talking about Martin Campbell and like the formalism of a wide shot and a master, and they don't do that. But like Gore, in a lot of ways, the Pirates movies, and especially the first one, they are the culmination of everything, because it is this modern action, modern cameras, modern technology, but like this very confident, keep the camera where it is, let the action play out, say what you, I mean, me and Connor were talking about this. Say what you will about Johnny Depp. That is a impossibly good performance.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't. That movie doesn't work without Johnny Depp.
No, and it's really
many Johnny Depp movies. Actually, I mean, I don't want to hang out with the guy, but like if we're looking at his filmography, you need him for Edward Scissorhands, Ed Wood, all these great movies. Yep.
Even like Benny and June. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, nobody else.
I don't remember who else was nominated. I don't remember who else was nominated that year, but like that is one of those is one of those interesting Oscar nominations.
Sleepy Hollow, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just
me and Jen are just
I'm with it, and it is that is one of those Oscar nominations though, the Pirates one, where you're like, you do look back and you're like, deserved. I don't know.
Granted,
and I don't remember who he was against. So there's a part of my brain that I'm like, maybe he should have won. Like I don't really remember, but I will say, and again, we don't have to necessarily bow at the feet of Johnny Depp. I'm not trying to do that, but it is just, you can't really deny it. And I think specifically, like we had our mutual friend Roxana Haddadi on the B side, and we talked about Orlando Bloom, and this was a big moment for Bloom, but I weirdly think what's unfortunate, and sorry to Orlando, but it is weird to watch Curse of the Black Pearl, and like he is given this impossible task of having to play opposite peak of his powers Johnny Depp, in like not only peak of his powers Johnny Depp, but like peak of his powers Johnny Depp in like the most perfectly catered character to his strengths, like all of it. And so it's this weird, like, I think Bloom holds up fine in this movie because he does what he needs to do and no more. But like,
you have Jeffrey Rush, you have all these other people.
You have all these other people that are kind of blowing him off the screen.
And the one, I'll say, the one who I think in history has been incredibly right about this, the one who really holds her own, and especially in the sequels, even from a costume perspective, Keira Knightley is
totally
undeniable. Like, she is so good, I think. And even that character is a good example, kind of as we're kind of culminating a little bit chronologically, like Catherine Zeta-Jones is doing great work in Zorro, but it's a limited character.
Same thing with Ormond and
Dagmar Dominchik, same thing. It's like, yes, she's stunning. Yes, she's, engaging, but it's limited. It's like the movie doesn't have time for these characters.
Yeah.
Keira Knightley, even in that first one, but especially the next two, I mean, she is driving the plot. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really nice to watch.
One of the few things I remembered. I had not seen this. I don't know if I did see the sequels. I probably did. I don't remember them. The last time I saw this would have been in 2003. And the only things I remembered was Johnny Depp, of course, and Keira Knightley, some of her line deliveries, like, you should try wearing a corset. I mean, it shows how good she was. And I think she was only like 17. I mean, she was
Oh my
young.
God. Yeah, she was not 20. Yeah, she was a teenager. Yeah, it's incredible. And it's the year after Bend It Like Beckham, basically. Can I quickly, so actor in a leading role.
Yeah, sure.
2004 Academy Awards for 2003 movies.
So Sean Penn,
Mystic River, winner. Yep. That's my daughter. I would have, Sean's fine. I would have given it to Johnny over that. That's fine. Bill Murray Lost in Translation, which
that's that
undeniable. It's a great performance.
Yeah.
And then underrated performance that I think now is properly rated, Jude Law in Cold Mountain.
Oh,
I think is a deserved nomination. I rewatched that movie last year. Way better than you remember, I think. And then the last nomination, interesting nomination, Ben Kingsley for The House of Sand and Fog.
Ooh, he was good.
Yeah. Which, fun fact,
so maybe Johnny didn't deserve to win, but
fun fact about House of Sand and Fog, saddest movie ever made. So just if you're ever looking just to be incredibly sad for a full week, just put on.
You know
House
why it's sad? Because you know what you can't build a house out of?
Sand
or fog.
It's a great point.
Not gonna work. Not gonna work.
But yeah, it's just it's so funny to, oh my gosh, these Neo-Swashbucklers. It's like, it's funny how you get to pirates and it really does feel like the end of something, right?
Well, it feels like Pirates is a deal with the devil, if I'm being honest, right?
Like, well, you're talking about the IP part of it, which I guess is
it feels like Pirates comes in and it's this weird. It is not unlike you go back in time and you think about those first 3 or 4 Marvel movies, right? Like people forget when those movies were coming out, like pre-Avengers being a hit.
It was exciting.
It was still a gamble. Yeah. Like people were like, is this going to work? Right. Like, and that's sort of how the first Pirates movie kind of felt too. It's like, well, they're making a movie off of this theme part. Like,
well, and Jen, I was to Connor's point, I was talking to him. I obviously have 2 young boys. I'm on Disney Plus a lot. And I was trying, obviously that's how I watched Pirates of the Caribbean, and I was trying to find it. And the category it is in on Disney Plus is movies based on rides,
right? Which is a whole,
and I just was like,
a whole subset,
and I was like, oh, there's enough of them that it's just a category that you're just like, oh yeah, movies based on rides, yeah. Jungle Cruise,
but I remember I remember the temperature because this was also the time, listener, Apple trailers was a big thing.
Oh, sure.
If you were like actively trying to follow like what was coming out and whatever. And I remember like the teaser trailer for this movie was just like moving through the island and it zooms out to a bird's eye view and the island is like a skull and crossbones. It's a good teaser. You're like, it's provocative. You're like, oh, okay. Like I didn't know what this was going to be.
Not your daddy's Pirates
a little bit. Right. You're like, what is this thing going to be? And then it is perfectly positioned where like Orlando Bloom gets enough like nerd steam off of Lord of the Rings and being like a standout kind of entertaining character in those movies that by the time this comes out, you're like, okay, so it's that dude. And I know Johnny Depp and he's fun and okay. And so it becomes this weird thing where like suddenly, the people who have seen The Mummy 99 and Mask of Zorro and whatever, who love these kind of movies, you get one and you're like, oh my God, I've been thirsty for so long. Like, how did this happen? And it's this weird, crazy thing, but it is at the end of the day, still this thing that's like based on a Disney theme park ride. So to me, it does feel really like this crucial moment, not only for the genre, but just for like big movie making in general, because it predates the Marvel movies. And I do think it is this kind of stepping stone in that methodology of like, what of somebody literally rummaging through the stuff and going, what do we got? Right? Like, what do we already own that we can just like try and make a thing into? And then, we're getting into different genres now, but then it gets followed up with like the success of the Transformers movies and the success, right? Like then we're almost full steam ahead.
Toys and rides.
Yeah.
I just want someone to just try to do the Shadow again. Right, Jen?
Yeah. Yes. They did make it.
Should I tell you guys about a really funny date I had around this time?
Please.
So I went out with this guy who I remember telling him, like, we were talking about this movie and I said, well, it's Keith Richards that he's doing. And he said, who's Keith Richards? And I said, from Rolling Stone. The guy started arguing with me. No, Jen, that's Mick Jagger. and he didn't. He's like Mick Jagger is enrolling. I'm like, yeah, they're two different.
They're
members.
both in it, guy.
Yeah.
I like the idea that
he got really like up in my grill about.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, and
you got mansplained.
Yes,
Mick Jagger
and
as
Keith
though
Richards.
he were Keith Richards. Here's my question: did he?
He didn't.
You know. Okay, did he think Keith Richards was like part of Cream or something? Like what?
Right?
Like,
did he think? Did he like not even know Keith Richards was a member?
He like knew who he was.
No, it's like I just said, you know, like Joe Blow from or like yeah.
What I would love, Jen, what I would love for the end of that story to be is you got the Keith Richards biography when he wrote it and mailed it to this guy and was like, hey, bub.
I know.
You wrote
or
a
the
book.
Annie Hall where you're like, well, I've got Keith Richards right.
Yeah, Marshall
But what I
McLuhan.
kind of love, and granted, if this was when the movie was in theaters, maybe this wasn't quite like zeitgeisty knowledge. But like by the time this movie came out on DVD, everybody like because Johnny Depp would say if you were watching
I think it was
late night,
pretty.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you read Entertainment Weekly, you knew that, right? Like it wasn't.
I mean, he's in the third one.
No, right. I'm just even saying.
It just makes me laugh. It just makes me laugh that he's in the
that guy probably went and was like, "Oh God, remember that date?" I was like, "Oh my God, that's Keith Richards."
Here's the thing. So when At World's End came out, you're telling me you did not get a formal apology from this gentleman? Oof, okay, you know what? Dead to us. Okay,
it's so funny. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so much about it. It's counter to your point. I mean, it's like people talk about this with Iron Man, like you mentioned it. You can point to a million things. I mean, people point to Jaws and Star Wars in the mid '70s, and you can't really predict how these things are going to change things. But
totally,
it's so interesting. It's so true. It really, when you pair Pirates with the success of Spider-Man the year before, right? You can really see how the industry kind of said, okay, we're going to kind of cannibalize ourselves.
Yeah.
For the success of so many near years. And, and as we're seeing kind of in this moment of recording, there's a dearth, right? There's hey, people like movies based on books. It ends with us, right? There's this kind of rediscovery happening of like, hey, people like original ideas. Maybe not $400 million worth of people, right? God knows.
Yeah.
But you're kind of seeing
what they should make? More swashbucklers. Because they're not that expensive.
And I'll say that's what I was going to say.
Write one like right after this episode. No,
and I do. I honestly think they're not. They are not that you could do a contained, like almost like The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a little bit not like it's a hard movie, but it's like you could do that setting, like do a swashbuckler on a boat, and it's expensive to shoot on water and it's expensive to have a boat, but like if that's all you're doing, right, and you can use studio, you can some of it's on the boat, but then some of it's on a stage, right? Like you could do it. It wouldn't have to cost you $150 million. Like it could cost you $50.
And they're right.
You know what I mean?
Like, Jen, we were all talking like off mic about like, you have something like Crouching Tiger, for instance, right? That like in 2000, or I guess it would have been made in 99, I guess, but like, gets made for basically what amounts to $17 million.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right. And like makes 200. I mean, I could be an idiot, I guess, but I feel like that ratio can still apply though. Like there's not a ton, I feel like there's not a ton you need to do to make one of these movies that intensely, even if you are doing physical locations and, nice costumes and whatever. It's like the beauty is in, you don't need lasers. You don't need like, you know what I mean? Like you don't need giant monsters. Like the beauty is in two people who are really good at sword fighting. Like, you don't even need
buckling their swash. Yeah.
They're buckling their swash.
They got buckle. And they got swash.
I haven't seen really anything on it, but there is a Count of Monte Cristo movie that came out.
Well, I think it's a French.
And there was a bunch of Three Musketeers. Yep.
I was going to say they're French productions, I believe.
Okay.
And you got people
the
like
Musketeers ones, that's like a show, right? Isn't that
No,
like
they're
movies.
They're
okay.
movies because it's Eva Green plays Milady, and Romain Duras is in it. Vincent Cassel is Athos. Like, Louis Garrel. Like they have like, Vicky Creeps is in. They have like
maybe I got to pivot to those. Maybe
European casts, and I think those are real budgets.
Poldark was good. I don't know if how much swashbuckling that is though. But yeah.
Paul the show Poldark. Yeah, that was a good show. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the Outlander, obviously, you have these. That's a book series. Like, I think you have.
Well, I think
exists.
I think, and again, we're towing the line to fantasy, but even I feel like the success of something like The Witcher on Netflix is a product of people kind of wanting that a little bit. Like, when that show came out and was doing well, most of what people would talk about is like, oh, the sword fights in it are really good, right? Like, and so I think there is this kind of, I don't know. There's space.
I think we got to stop recording, crack the scripts.
There we go.
We'll send it to Jordan Harp. We'll send it to somebody. And just be like, what do you think? They'll let us know.
Yeah.
And we'll get cooking.
And around this time too, we were talking off air about other movies that had to deal with swords, including the Matrix to some extent, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I was thinking about Kill Bill, Knight's Tale. There were a bunch of these.
Oh my God, a Knight's Tale.
And well,
we got a Shannon Sossaman. That's right.
Rufus Sewell was in a bunch of these. Yeah.
Sossaman was so important to my to me at the right age at a young her. Am I right about this, Connor? Didn't most kids our age wasn't Sossaman like kind of of like an exotic, like there was something about her that was
had a
kind
look
of like,
about her. Yeah,
I was like, what's up with her? She's cool. Yeah, and I think A Knight's Tale was really where that started. And she had a little run there. But man, I loved A Knight's Tale.
That's a movie. It's funny too, because that's like maybe not quite a swashbuckler, but maybe probably closer to something like First Knight. Like if First Knight is the swashbuckling version of like A Pretty Woman, right, or something like that. Knight's Tale is the swashbuckling version of like She's All That, or something. You know what I mean? Like it's the 2000s.
What's funny about it?
Anachronistic. On purpose.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The irreverence, which, in the early 2000s. And look, you can blame it. I mean, this is funny to think about, but it's so true. I mean, Shrek is like the reason for it, honestly. Right. Not that, I mean, I don't know which one came out first, but like that irreverence, right? That winking kind of like, we get it. You get it. We get it. The tone of this movie is like, isn't it funny? And I do think that vibe has curdled a bit. I think when you rewatch it, you're kind of like
more than a bit. If I'm being honest, like
it's pretty
just
dated.
across moviedom. I think it's.
But when you look at these young people do their Letterboxd, 4 favorites. So many say Shrek.
Look, no. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense.
It made an impression. I'm just saying it made an impression.
I agree. I think it just connects the dots in a way that dismays and upsets me. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, oh, that was patient zero for like the just infiltration of irony and the exodus,
where we are now.
Exodus of earnestness, right? Like from movie making, right? Like I think I guess as we're closing up, like one of the things that's been so nice to watch all these movies is that there's just like a beautiful earnestness to them that's so deeply enjoyable. And again, even like some of the ones you wouldn't think of, like you mentioned, like A Crouching Tiger or whatever, are just these like deeply felt, I don't know, like deeply felt movies that are
they're
romantic.
Nice I mean, I think they're romantic.
They're romantic. Yeah.
I think romance
the chivalry,
has big R and little R, right? It's like they're all forms of
I do think romance, and Jen, I wonder what you think about this. I do think romance, of all of the kind of, not to get overly general here, but like, tonal genres, right? That like we know and love. Romance seems very dearth right now. right? Without it being
very
like
much.
body
or like
yeah.
Because
Or
even
the almost sexless rom-coms that kind of follow the same at Christmas, there's like 8 million of them.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
it's like on Hallmark, but now every network has the same kind, and you're like, yeah.
And there's a formula, and I get the formula, and I like that people like those movies. Like my mom loves those movies, and that's great. And like Alonso Duralde writes, he covers those. I love all that stuff. Like,
I watch them with my mom.
Yeah. But even I'm thinking of like, is it the idea of you, the Anne Hathaway film?
Yeah, I didn't see that, but yeah.
So it is a romance, right? There are sex scenes. It's a fine picture, Michael Showalter, but it's like I could count on my hand, like, it ends with us. But even my point with it ends with us is like, but it's a really hardened drama about assault, right? So it's not like just like, there's a romance element to it.
And
but
even a movie like Hitman, a movie I love, right?
Exactly.
Which is a
the
very
concept
funny,
is so high.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's not a romantic movie. Like, it's a sexy movie. It still has all the other things we're missing in other places in other movies, but it's not romantic. It's not, like,
And
I guess more importantly is maybe it's not earnest. I think that's also what we're saying too, right?
I will say, as a Jen, I don't know if you've seen this movie or how you feel about it. Dan, I know you love it because we talked to the filmmaker as well, but just a Venn diagram of what we're talking about right now. Everyone should watch Cyrano, which is one
of my favorites. Oh my God.
It's an incredible movie.
Joe Wright.
It is very romantic. And has a little bit of buckle and swash in it too.
It kind of does. It's true.
It's got a little
fight sequence.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of buckle and swash. So
that's a great call. That's a good way to actually.
Cyrano's great. Everyone should watch.
Watch Cyrano.
If that's what people take away from this, they go watch Cyrano. I guess I would say if you don't like The National, you might have a hard time.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a lovely.
So can I ask, what's our favorite? So I feel like, Jen, First Night's high for you of what we talked about, right?
Yeah, I would say.
Count of Monte Cristo is mine, but it's so personal to me. Are you Zorro, Con?
I was going to say Zorro is the one that I would recommend to. I mean, I would recommend almost any of these to anybody. Obviously. But I was saying to Jen before we started recording that, like, Zorro, obviously supremely entertaining. I could recommend it to anybody. Personally, for me, I think I do think Count of Monte Cristo is like a self-contained perfect movie. Like, it really, I don't know, there's something about it and everything it strives for. It like hits all the right buttons at the exact right time. So it's a movie that I think if someone wants more movies like this and they haven't seen it, that I think is probably the one, because chances are you've probably seen Mask of Zorro right at this point. But if you haven't seen, I would hope. But if you haven't seen Count of Monte Cristo, I would definitely send people that way. I love it deeply.
And I would say, if it counts, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be my favorite for sure.
That's like a masterpiece.
Yeah, Crouching Tiger.
I finished because you had brought it up, Jen. I did rewatch it and right before we started recording, and like was wrapping it up while I was setting up my podcast equipment, and I was just like, it's one of.
What is the name? In deep COVID? I'll get really real with you guys. In deep COVID, let me find it. What is the Yo-Yo Ma at the end? What's the name?
Oh, the name of the track.
I'm gonna find it real quick.
It's an incredible score, though.
So it's called. Am I not gonna?
Chow Yun-Fat, who shows up in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, by the way, which is sort of like a funny thing.
Yeah. The Eternal Vow.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I would just, if I had was taking a walk, whatever, I would play that song on repeat and just let my, feel my feelings, whatever was going on in the world. I mean, that song, and I got to see it's funny enough, I love Yo-Yo Ma. I think he's one of our great artists. I got to, Connor, I don't know if you remember this in Chicago, I got to work with him and talk with him and film with him, which was crazy. He was so lovely. And then I got to see him perform with the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra last year. And it was like not his, it was not his, it was like another, he played like other music.
Yeah.
So, which was great because it was just like new, not new stuff, but new stuff for me that he was playing. And I mean, just what an absolute sensation. And just like, yeah, the Eternal, I'm going to listen to it the minute we stop recording. The Eternal Vow is like,
but I do, to your point,
God.
to your point, Jen, about whether or not it counts. I think Crouching Tiger definitely counts. I think, like,
then that's my fave.
It's obviously adjacent to like the, wushu cinema moment, but I do think also those are swashbucklers, right? But
they are,
it's a different kind of fighting,
I agree.
But yeah, Jen, thank you for
good topic, you guys. My God.
Hey, no, I'm glad we got to do it. And it was fun to just like, again, these are movies that are almost never far from my mind because I love so many of them so much. So it was nice to kind of watch them all in conversation with each other.
And also just for your listeners, the cool thing, just to bring it back to like the Errol Flynn movies, they all age well. Like,
oh yeah, watch any of the, like,
the language of the Seahawk is like
incredible. Yeah,
I might be doing an episode on Errol Flynn and Raoul Walsh with Amy Robinson. Was thinking of doing.
Oh, that's
really?
Cool. That's
because
really
cool. I mean, they're so. I mean, these are movies that were made 80 years ago.
Yeah,
and it's like you could watch like the silhouetted sword fight at the end of the Seahawk, and literally be like, it's so exciting.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. And
the
and
ship battle, even at the top of the Seahawk, like the stuff that people are doing physically for real is just the most insane stuff. And that's
why I bring up the only shit I can think of recently that compares to that is those Pirates movies. Like,
sure, yeah.
You know, just and maybe like Crouching Tiger is like an extension and an evolution in a good way. But like that's almost my point. Like if you listen to this and you catch up with Dead Man's Chest or At World's End, go watch, fucking the 1938 Adventures of Robin Hood, and you're just going to be like enraptured. You know what I'm saying? It's just like
one that I'll also shout out, and not to drag this out, but one that I will also shout out. It's an Errol Flynn one that I like a lot, that I feel like doesn't get a lot of play, but I actually like it more than Robin Hood. Is Adventures of Don Juan. You guys seen that movie? It's just a fun. He plays Don Juan, and it's just this sort of, it's a little cheekier than Robin Hood is, but it's got these great sword fights, and it's got a giant sword fight on a staircase at the end. And I think Flynn was a little older at the time, so I don't think he was the one doing the stunts anymore. But there is a stunt where this guy leaps at another person with a dagger from a staircase that's like a giant staircase, and he just like dives off of it. And I remember randomly, I discovered this movie on TCM, over 10 years ago at one point. And I remember like kind of half watching it, and I went and I like bought it on DVD because of this one moment. Cause I was like, well, now I have to watch this whole movie, where like I look up and I see this beautiful staircase dive happen. And I was just like, that's the most insane shit ever. Like somebody just like dove off of this staircase with a dagger onto another guy. It's like, it's a very like, it's not as flashy as some stuff you'd see even in other Errol Flynn movies. Again, like the ship battles and the Seahawk or whatever. It's a very simple stunt. But it's like incredible. It's incredible to watch. I would almost equate it to something like, like the knife in the eye moment in Mission Impossible 2 or something like that. Like it doesn't quite look like that, but in the way that like that almost seems tame compared to Tom Cruise hanging off of the Burj Khalifa kind of thing. But when you take it in its own context, you're like, oh wow, it is
shocking. Still.
A simple, effective thing. So Adventures of Don Juan, check it out.
Sounds good. Yeah, well, thank you so much, you guys. You'll have to come up with another topip and come on back. You're always welcome.
Well, Horizon is on the horizon.
Yes, I would say part 1 and 2. We're gonna do an episode.
Let's do it. We'll
involve us however you deem fit. We'll gather all the Horizon heads and just celebrate the master.
We'll do a round table.
A Horizon round table.
Yeah,
I love it. Yes, sounds good. I also want to thank everyone for listening, especially my patrons who support the show and help fund my research, equipment, film rentals, RSS feeds, and more for as little as $1 per month at the Film Intuition Patreon, which is the home base for the show. Other ways you can support the podcast are by sharing, reviewing, and subscribing to Watch with Jen wherever you get your podcasts, and also checking out the cool merch store hosted and created by our talented logo designer, Kate Gabrielle. You can find the merchandise store, including shirts, tote bags, stickers, and more by visiting filmintuition.com and clicking on the shop link. The show's theme music is solo acoustic guitar by Jason Shaw and is available in the free music archive. You can also reach me or interact with Watch with Jen anytime on Twitter, either at Film Intuition or our Watch with Jen account as well. Well, until next time, please take care and happy movie watching. This is Jen Johans at filmintuition.com and Film Intuition on social media and Letterboxd. And this is Watch with Jen.